Welcome to Inside Games, the only gaming news show brave enough to spare a thought for Concord.
Yeah, just one though. The rest of the internet is kind of gleefully dancing on the game's grave. It's not necessarily a happy occasion when a game like this just, arrives dead. But we get it in a weird way. Everyone's burned out on games as service games. Everyone's kind of burned out on bland games. Concord, it's not exactly appealing, is it?
Lawrence, how did the world not go wild for Trash Can?
Goodbye.
I love Trash Can. I played as Trash Can a number of times when I played Concord, and I loved him.
I would be a fly on the wall at that design meeting. We need another character. What do we do? And just look in the corner. Whoa! That said, the game's not exactly terrible. It has a surprising amount of content for a hero shooter at launch, especially when you compare it to other games that hit, like Overwatch.
All right, yeah, so what gives? To learn more, we got to hear from the Inside Game staffer that knows the most about trash cans and good taste. Charlotte, what's the convo on Concord?
Oh, Bruce, it's pretty simple. Nobody's playing it.
That's not good for a multiplayer shooter. You need people. That's kind of the opposite of good.
Yeah, it is. Very good, Lawrence. Because it seems like Concord is the opposite of what people want right now. The live service game from Sony and Firewalk Studios released last week and is not exactly setting the world on fire. Walk. The 5v5 hero shooter lets players take control of one of many free gunners, each with different abilities. And it's Sony's recent attempt into the live service market.
But apparently nobody wants to be a free gunner or a trash can.
No, they don't. This is not Apple's desktop trash can. This is something different entirely. Currently, the game is sitting at an underwhelming 65 on Metacritic, with Push Square calling it a clean and well-meaning first-person shooter, but said that its lack of real identity is an issue, and it's difficult to determine just how much Sony is going to get behind it long-term.
Yeah, that's an issue for, the crowded field that is multiplayer shooters. The other problem is, to play a multiplayer game, like we kind of alluded to previously, you need one very important thing: other players.
That's in the word multiplayer. And Concord is, multiplayer. Concord is severely lacking in that department, peaking at less than 700 players shortly after it launched last Friday, and then dipping below 200 as of today.
Yeah, that's rough.
Yeah, not good.
And it doesn't compare well either. I mean, that number is pretty bad by itself, but if you compare it to other things that are out right now, you really see how bad it is. Valve kind of just soft launched their new MOBA multiplayer shooter Deadlock. That peaked recently at more than 92,000 players, and that's without any kind of marketing or PR or press or anything. The new Chinese developed hit Black Myth Wukong isn't a multiplayer game at all, but it's setting records on Steam, peaking at more than 2.4 million players.
And that's not even mentioning popular mainstays, of course, like Counter-Strike 2, PUBG, Dota 2, Apex Legends. All of which, of course, they've been around for years, and they are doing far, far better on Steam than Concord, which is to be expected. They've been around a long time, but Concord's launch this is where you want the most players, and they have got very little.
Yeah, it typically only drops from launch. So it's a crowded field. I think everybody knows that, and Concord is really not doing anything to stand out.
Now, as a review in The Gamer put it, Concord doesn't have a tidal wave of fans supporting it and isn't free to try out or available with any subscription service, so it has a lot of work to do in order to make the effort of playing it worthwhile. God, it's like Sony missed the whole point of games as a service.
Yep.
Ellie Gold
Right.
of PC Gamer tried to play Concord yesterday, and there were only 96 players online. Granted, those are non-peak hours, but still. It took about 7 minutes to find a game, and Gold wrote that I've played plenty of other games that can have similarly long queues, but the difference is that I'm not sure Concord is worth the wait. Ouch!
On the game subreddit, others are complaining of similarly long wait times, of course.
User Wiki09 wrote that they waited 8 minutes for matchmaking and then the game just timed out. Quote, I love the game and want to play it. Unfortunately, I can't wait 8 minutes plus between games.
Yeah, the tepid response to Concord also represented another flop for Sony's foray into live service games.
Yeah, over the last few years, Sony has tried repeatedly to get more into live service games, which is a departure for PlayStation, which has historically been known for its AAA single-player games. But after acquiring Destiny developer Bungie, Sony president Hiroki Totoki said they would launch more than 10 live service games by the end of its 2025 fiscal year.
And it was pretty clear all around that Sony acquired Bungie specifically for their knowledge about games as service.
Yeah, but by November, Totoki stepped back from those earlier predictions, said that Sony would instead aim for 6 online multiplayer games released by the end of Sony's 2025 fiscal year.
Okay. A trash can left. He overheard you guys.
Oh no!
Goodbye.
PlayStation's games as service strategy has seen other sputters lately too. Helldivers 2 could be seen as a breakout success, though the game's concurrent players have dropped to about 10% of its launch audience. Recent updates have seen that number tick back up though, so there's signs of hope.
Yeah, it's also still fun, which is good. In December of last year, Naughty Dog announced that they were ceasing development on The Last of Us Online, explaining that they would have to pivot their entire studio to supporting an online service game as opposed to making those premium AAA games we all know and love. Well, love.
Well, love, yes, of course. And while there were high hopes initially for Concord, which is a new IP that was shown off in Sony's recent State of Play, based on that initial trailer, players thought it was kind of an adventure game. They quickly turned on it, though, when it was revealed that the game was a 5v5 live service FPS.
Meanwhile, as many have noted, it's not free to play or even free to try, so there's a bar to entry that Concord clearly isn't generating enough interest to clear.
So what do we make of all this? I think it's kind of, I don't know, it's pretty telling. I think the audience is taking Concord's failure as a definite signal of what should and shouldn't be in the market. Trend chasing is kind of out, even though it's still in, whatever. There's so much to talk about here in terms of the trends and the patterns and maybe what Sony's up to. What do you guys make of Concord's performance?
Yeah, I feel like, I don't know if it's my age or the industry itself, but whereas, you know, my parents' and grandparents' generation, every game console was a Nintendo, now every one of these games is an Overwatch for me. Oh, they're playing their Overwatch, because there's such an inundation of things trying to chase this model, but like, we've seen like Lawbreakers and Paladins and everything fall way short of the mark years ago. And so for Sony to come late to the game, makes sense. It's not really their bag, but also it seems like they don't really intend to go like whole hog into this kind of marketplace, because the upfront charge speaks to a company that has made its nut, if you'll excuse the parlance, on selling games, not selling, you know, the things that come once you've hooked people. So like, it just, I don't know if it's arrogance or just a stubborn business practice, but to see something that is completely new IP with this level of barrier, like maybe like, I don't know, like if Overwatch was like, hey, we're making Overwatch 3 and it's gonna cost $70, people would be furious, but they would clear probably enough to make up for the game's operating costs and get people in, and then, you know, sales or whatever. But like, I don't know. It's just, once this was announced, it didn't seem like there was a world where it was going to succeed. And that was before I knew about the upfront cost. Like, it's such an incredible uphill battle, and seeing how they've treated the teams at Bungie with all the layoffs, including like highly senior staff, shows that I don't know if they're serious about this, and I wouldn't be surprised to see that 10 games by 2025, 6 games, like eventually being like, oops, we're just gonna make The Last of Us 3.
I think even if you look at Overwatch, where it's at now, they've hacked that thing up and changed it around and made it free to play and tried all these things to, I guess, further monetize their players or increase their player base. But to me, Overwatch is kind of late stage games of service, and that's where this stuff all goes. So it's weird, yeah, to see another game try to launch and establish the start of that when the start was really 8 years ago for the audience. To me, this almost feels like shades of Stadia, which is like a company that has a lot of money trying to buy their way into a different sort of product. And you can't really do that in gaming, not yet anyway, not that I've been able to see. So Sony acquired Bungie, thinking that Bungie had the Midas touch for games of service projects, but it turns out there is no such thing, because the market is fickle, and by the time you launch a product, that trend is probably well done, and all your competition has done it too, so the vein's been mined out. Sony's not stupid, nor are they ignorant. You know, they know these things. So to me, it's funny, Bruce, because we've talked a little bit about Sony feeling a little invincible. And to me, that's what this starts to feel like. When you've had so many successes in a row and you've made loads of money, you start to think that people will come to you, or that your process is infallible. To me, it almost reminds me of like PlayStation 3 era Sony, where after PlayStation 2, they were so chuffed, they thought everybody would come to them no matter what. So they put out this monstrosity of a console that was really difficult to develop for. They thought they had all their third parties in the bag, and suddenly they lost market share. I don't think Sony's that's not going to happen to Sony now, because they have the PlayStation Store and a massive built-in audience that just got a huge surge off of Black Myth Wukong. So they have pillars to hold them up now, but this attempt to sort of buy their way into a type of game, to me, it feels like executive hubris, you know, and a Naughty Dog being like, holy crap, this is way more work than we thought, and bailing out. It's a good sign, but still, it's an interesting one that they thought they could just kind of like throw a switch, and then all of a sudden all the developers they have that are mastered at making premium AAA single-player games can now suddenly just make this other type of game and make it a hit. It's not really working out that well. The thing is, though, what gets me is the economics of it makes sense. You can launch 5 bombs and have one of them succeed, and then you've got 8-10 years of very low overhead revenue that rolls in because of that. So I think they're just playing the numbers game because they're running a business. But I get it from the audience perspective. If you're burned out on these kinds of games, and especially I think if you're burned out on games that are like sales platforms rather than an earnest expression of something cool that maybe the developers really wanted to make and finally got the funding for, you can kind of feel the difference, kind of wafting off of these products. So I get from the audience perspective why there might be an amount of celebration about this. But it is still kind of a cool game, and it's got some cool ideas in there. So not too happy to see the internet celebrating a game's failure, but I also kind of understand it.
We're doing a lot of investigation on why this game failed out of the gate, and all of this stuff is correct. What Charlotte said, what Lawrence said, all of it's correct. I really think it just boils down to the fact that the game isn't fun. I played the game because I was excited for it a month ago. I played it in open beta, or a closed beta, actually. I bought into it. And I just didn't enjoy myself. It was really interesting because I was like, I thought for sure, I was like, oh, well, this has got to be good. They spent 8 years on it and they spent $200 million. And I was like, there has to be some fun here. And I really just didn't find it. Lawrence and I found a few positive things about it, like leaving the, different heal items on the map so that things would carry over rounds. And there's like this weird perk system that's impossible to understand, but it exists. And they were trying. But the barrier to entry is $40. Once this thing goes free to play, we might see a bump in players. They're gonna make it free to play. Just wait a few minutes. It's gonna happen. But I just don't think the fun is there yet. I think even though people are crapping on the fucking they're shitting on the skins and they're shitting on the design and all that other stuff. I think all that stuff is all right. I don't think it's that bad. I just thought the game wasn't fun. So to me, it was a pretty simple equation. And no one's giving it a chance, which is unfortunate. Maybe they could find some fun on the internet, but the internet hates to have fun. We all know that.
I don't know. I just feel like if they were serious about like really getting this launched off, like looking at like Apex Legends, how like there were stories about how like they actually paid Ninja to do that, and it's like, of course they did. Obviously they paid him, and it worked. It fucking worked. They put up the cash up front and it got a lot of interest. And Concord, they put out a Guardians of the Galaxy trailer and just expected people to be like, okay.
Which is what Lawrence was saying earlier about Sony being arrogant.
Yeah, right. Yeah, it is that hubris.
On the topic of being jaded about mass market AAA games, because I certainly am, I think we need to spare a moment to shout out the publishers that do operate at that scale but still take risks. Capcom. I've been bellowing about this for a while, but like Exoprimal was really good. They put out Kunitsugami this year. It is extremely vibrant, extremely unique, super fun. It's part of Game Pass. And Capcom is operating at the layer where ostensibly they should tell games like that to fuck off because they're just not worth the money. But they're still out there kind of trying to put interesting ideas into games and launching those projects. So spare some time for the big publishers that still take risks because there aren't that many of them left. But yeah, please check out Kunitsugami. That's maybe the last time I'll shout that game out.
Thanks again, patrons. Our Inside Games Patreon. We get supported every single month by these patrons, and these patrons will always hop on to fill out your empty Concord team. I don't know that we can promise that for them. Red N003, Regulus, Aaron Fraze, Pitstrip, and Digital Renegade.
I've got some other patrons here. They weren't sold on Concord yet, but you know what? They'll hop into voice chat and keep you company while you wait for those queue times. Classy folks, yeah. Brandon Popovich, Jose Diaz, Jared Watkins, Old Baby Leg, and Ian McGee. Thanks for being solid Discord folks.